leadership role and you've realized that it's actually more challenging than you had originally thought? Did you get into it thinking that your working relationships with your direct reports and with your peers would be a certain way and it's turning out to be the opposite of what you expected it to be in the beginning? Well, there are certain myths of leadership that kind of get demystified when we actually start the new leadership role. And when we're confronted with the reality related to some of the challenges that we can face versus the misconceptions that we had originally thought about, it can be difficult to figure out what to do to be successful. Well, the truth about leadership effectiveness is that it's not always the smartest leader or the most well-known leader or even people who have led longer than you that are necessarily the most effective at leadership. Very often, leaders who succeed have agile minds that adapt to using methods of leadership that put them at an advantage for the times that we now live in. Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'll discuss 5 common new leadership misconceptions and what they don't tell you about leadership. We'll explore questions like, why do we follow leaders? And we'll review tips that will give us a better definition of a good leader. So if you want to know a few common misconceptions about leadership, stay tuned and we'll get right into it. Welcome to the best place for new and emerging leaders who want help navigating challenging conversations in the workplace. Today's topic is 5 common new leadership misconceptions and what they don't tell you about leadership. Now, we all have a picture in our minds of how to go about things when we start a new job or begin any new task. It can shake us up a bit when things are different from what we originally expected. The thing is, if we're flexible, we can adapt and discover new ways of tackling any challenge. In a lost footage interview, Bruce Lee comments that we need to be like water when this happens. He says water is flexible and it adapts to change easily. It's formless and shapeless, but when you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. When you put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. When you put water into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Water can flow or it can crash. He says, be like water, my friend. I say that we should use the same philosophy when we're confronted with the fact that our misconceptions are not reality. Well, in today's video, we'll discuss some common new leadership misconceptions and what you can do to turn your thought process around when these things happen. So if you're interested, give this video a thumbs up and let's get into it. The very first misconception about leadership is that there's only one specific right way to lead. This couldn't be further from the truth. Your leadership style and the way that you choose to lead will depend upon many different factors. Chief among those factors is your unique personality. Each of us brings our own personality, our history, our experience, our knowledge, and our individual worldview to any job that we do. And this is no different for leaders. And because these things are a part of who we are, they'll shape our leadership approach and style. And while this is definitely true, learning and personal development can help us to tailor our leadership style to leverage our strengths so that our areas of growth do not negatively impact how we show up as leaders. For example, let's take a look at the legacy of 2 very different leaders like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. were both influential leaders who advocated for civil rights in America. Now, while they were both dynamic speakers who essentially fought for a similar cause, they each brought their own unique approach and philosophy to how they led that cause. Hence, my point is that there can be many different ways to lead. How you choose to lead will also depend on other factors like the type of business industry that you're in and what your specific situation calls for. And it will also depend upon the dictates of your external environment. When you think of British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, who served during the Second World War, or the first female British Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, they both served their country during uncertain times of tremendous change. So it would stand to reason that their leadership would be shaped or influenced by the changing times in which they found themselves. And while they each experienced both successes and hardships, each of them also made an indelible mark on history as leaders. It's important not to limit yourself as a new leader to a one-size-fits-all type of leadership model. When we think of the idea that there's no one absolute right way to lead, it's important to note that because this is true, there are many different attributes of successful leaders that you can model or pattern yourself after. I always say, take what you need, meaning use what's useful to you and throw the rest out. The beauty is that we all offer something unique and special in the role of leader. And we continue to learn and grow, we will craft a unique and authentic leadership legacy as we take on our own leadership style. Tip number 2. So the second misconception about leadership is that having a title makes you a leader. While being elected to a leadership role will give the authority that a leadership position provides, it will not automatically translate to respect from your team. They may respect the hierarchy of authority, but your title won't make them trust or respect you. Regardless of your title or position, people make a choice to follow you because of the leadership example that you set. In his book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, John Maxwell shares a few facts about leadership that speak to my point. The 3 laws outlined in his book that speak to the fact that a title doesn't make one a leader are the law of the lid, the law of influence, and the law of the picture. The law of the lid states that the lower the individual's ability to lead, the lower the lid on his potential. And the higher the individual's ability to lead, the higher the lid on his or her potential. This means that the leader is not only willing to make a personal investment in improving his or her ability to lead, but the person also understands that effective leaders understand what motivates people, and the leader also makes an effort to learn how to lead people effectively. The next important factor is the law of the picture. The law of the picture states that people follow their leader's positive example, and that example sets the tone for motivating the team to perform well. It has absolutely nothing to do with the leader's position and everything to do with the leadership on display. The third law that I want to emphasize is what Maxwell refers to as the law of influence. The law of influence says that leaders understand that leadership cannot be mandated. Instead, it's a privilege that must be earned. The truth is that influence trumps authority any and every day. Effective leaders who want to make a great and positive impact understand that their leadership development and ability need to match the level of desired effectiveness they wish to have. The truth is, leadership will sometimes, most definitely test your mettle. And leaders who have the wrong impression of what it takes to be successful may be unaware of the exact nature of the negative consequences that this may produce. What I mean by this is that leaders who do not lead beyond the title may find themselves behaving in ways that are counterproductive to successfully leading their teams. Leadership is far less about the perks, the prestige, and the power than it is about leading with the mission in mind and fostering positive working relationships with your direct reports. In a simple quote, Maxwell also offers that leadership is a choice, not a position. Please give this video a thumbs up if you agree with that quote. Let's get into number 3. The third misconception about leadership is that leadership is about delegation. There are 2 schools of thought when it comes to the topic of leadership and delegation of the work. Some people are of the opinion that the direct reports or the team members are responsible for doing the work, while the leader is mainly responsible for developing the people who actually do the work. Others are of the opinion that the leader should partner in doing the work alongside their direct reports, thus demonstrating that the leader is willing to work hard with the team no matter what it takes. In my experience, I found that there are pros and cons to either extreme. Leaders who don't delegate run the risk of being overwhelmed by the work when they take on the Herculean task of doing it all alone because the leader wants to have things done just so. Taking this approach can also send the wrong message to the team. It may send the message that the leader doesn't think that the team is competent or capable of completing the work. And doing that may leave the staff feeling disempowered. On the other hand, leaders who over-delegate can leave themselves at a disadvantage if they're not keeping abreast of what they're working on in order to ensure outcomes and manage the team's performance. Some leaders also take the delegation thing to such an extreme that they can sometimes delegate themselves right out of a job. Now, I say this in a kind of joking way, of course, but when leaders delegate too much and too often, they sometimes leave their teams directionless without leadership support in critical and key areas. As I said, many people are in polar opposite opinions on this debate. I believe that it's important for leaders to seek balance when it comes to delegation of the work. Your leadership is a balance of many different things. Leaders are called to be visionaries, manage change, and manage performance, just to name a few things. The bigger question to ask is, when you're trying to find that balance, what things stand in the way of your being an effective leader? If over-delegating the work stands in your way, then change it. If not delegating the work enough stands in your way, then change that too. The key when it comes to work delegation is finding the balance between empowering and delegation. Before we move on, what's one misconception that you had about leadership? Let me know in the comment section below. I'd be interested in hearing what that is. Tip number 4. The fourth misconception about leadership is that as a leader, you're already a good communicator and there's not much else to learn about effective communication. When the truth really is that we all have a lot to learn about communication and its effectiveness. Many leaders take for granted that not much extra effort is needed to work on enhancing their communication skills. Even the best communicators continue to work on improving this particular skill set. No matter what role you have, we all require development in this area. This is an especially true or especially important skill for leaders to develop. The truth is that whether or not you think that you're a good communicator, it's a good idea to continue to focus on improving this skill set as much as possible. Like any other skill, the art of communicating effectively needs to be cultivated. This is because there are many different components to communicating effectively. Things like use of language, intention, style, effective method selection, and the list goes on and on, are all things that need to be developed in order to improve and be effective in this area. And one of the upsides is we can learn from others, and people will always more than likely teach you how to communicate with them. The fifth misconception about leadership is that self-development isn't strictly necessary. While this statement may not be something that people voice out loud, the failure to develop a habit of continued self-development is basically saying the same thing through reenaction. Some leaders believe that continuing education can be placed on the back burner, or they'll say things like, "I'm just not a reader." Investing in your personal development is crucial if you want to be a dynamic leader who's effective in your role. Scott Adams, creator of the Dilbert comic strip, said, "Every skill you acquire doubles the odds of your success. Invest in yourself." If you want to become an above average leader who evolves into the very best leader that you're capable of being, then you'll need to dedicate time to learning about success habits and looking at the successful habits of influential leaders and what they do. This will require focused and intentional choices to make leadership development a priority. Many leaders desire to achieve greatness, but they're not willing to devote the focused attention outside of the working hours that it may take to devote or focus oneself to the task. Motivational speaker and author Tony Robbins said, "One reason so few of us achieve what we want is that we never direct our focus. We never concentrate our power. Most people dabble their way through life, never deciding to master anything in particular." My question is, are you a dabbler? Will you dabble your way through your life and through your leadership? Or will you become the phenomenal leader that you're meant to be? I saw an Instagram post one time by Millionaire Mindset that said, you could become anyone if you put in the time. There are quite a few misconceptions out there about leadership, and the truth is, we only realize what some of those things are after we get into it. At least I know that used to be true for me. The goal is to develop into a competent, world-class individual who happens to be in a leadership role. There are a few more misconceptions about leadership that I could add, but in the interest of time, I just kept it at 5. But let me know in the comments if you want another video where I can share a few more misconceptions. Now, if you're watching this video and you want to learn more about how to stand out as a leader, be sure to check out my channel and subscribe, clicking the notification bell, because in the next video, I'll provide 5 ways that new leaders can stand out on the job. As always, have a great week, be kind to yourself, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching.